And good morning to you. Time for Freedom Friday, where you have the freedom to speak freely. And as I have told you, Katherine Henry is our guest this morning. Thank you, Katherine.
Yes, good morning. Can you guys hear me okay with these headphones I just had to put on?
Yes. You are good. You are good.
Okay.
All right.
My other one's died.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that happens. Don't you love it when it happens in mid-broadcast? Yeah. That is just so fun. And you've done a lot of work, a lot of broadcasting. Go to Restore Freedom, KH.com. Get the newsletter. If this is something you haven't done, my friends, you must get it. How much time does this take you, Katherine? I mean, it's massive.
It's every single day, throughout the day. Yeah, it's kind of a never-ending process. I try to keep up with it, and like you said, the weekly newsletter, I try to send it out every Sunday, and of course, we do our Restore Freedom Weekly show every Tuesday at noon live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Rumble, and DLive. And this year in the fall, we actually also started uploading it to social media platforms as well as all the podcasting platforms, so people can catch it there and just listen to it afterwards if that's more their thing. So, yeah, and all the segments we do throughout the week, like later today, we'll be posting our Friday Freedom Fighting Tool. So, Wednesday, we have our Wednesday Way to Get Involved challenges. There's always something that we're doing because, it's a day-to-day fight. And, man, would I love to be actually paying more of my bills and making lots of money.
Right.
But God's calling me to fight the freedom fight, so I'm going to keep doing this.
Now, any particular thing that you would like to focus on, the floor is yours. And also to our listeners, if you'd like to call, make any comments or statements or words of encouragement for Katherine, you know the number, 482-1330, 482-1331. What's on your heart today?
Just hearing you say the phone number, I just have to say, my childhood phone number was 482-0039. I have no idea why I still remember that 30-some years later.
Isn't that funny? I know I remember my phone number, too, from when I was a kid. My parents' phone number. So funny.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to whoever owns that number now that I just put it on radio. But anyway, first of all, before I forget, I don't think she's going to be able to listen because she's 83 and hasn't totally figured out what her smartphone can do for her. But
okay.
My grandma, Kris Kyro, who was born in Arvo, she is in the Hancock hospital right now. Sorry.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned her. Thank you. Because I was going to ask, how's your grandma doing? Okay, so she's in a hospital right now. All right.
Yep, she's in the Hancock hospital, and luckily there, because at least my aunt lives there and my cousins live there, in Chapel.
Yeah.
So it's closer than going to Marquette,
right?
Which is where, before my grandfather passed, that's the hospital he ended up being at more often. Anyway, so she's battling cancer, and for anybody who might be listening who knows her, reach out to her, send her a text, give her a call, visit if you're able to do it at the hospital, but let her know how important she is, because she's my only grandparent left, and she was always my favorite. Sorry to my other grandparents.
Well, I know. I have my favorites too. We love them all, but we do have favorites. So
yeah. So anyway, if she does happen to be listening, I just wanted to make sure she knows that she is loved and thought about. But
I'm going to put her on our prayer line too. We have prayers every Monday through Friday at 10 to 7. So I'm going to put your grandma on our prayer line, and just remind people, reach out. Yeah. Well,
and as far as prayer goes, I guess I'm going to ask you to add 2 more people that are actively fighting cancer. One is my dad's sister, my aunt down here in Florida, who has terminal lung cancer, and my best friend in Michigan, Deb. She is battling terminal lung cancer as well, and is raising her 14-year-old granddaughter, and it's basically all on her own. So that's been heartbreaking as well. But if anybody can spend any extra time adding those individuals to their prayers too, that would be awesome.
I will. Do you want me to say your aunt's first name in Florida?
Laura.
I'm sorry?
Laura.
Laura. Okay. All right. And she's in Florida. All right. So I'm writing that down, and I will have Laura and your best friend Deb also, along with your grandma, Kris Kyro. Yeah, it's so hard, and especially we have loved ones and then people who are speaking out and standing up and doing what they're doing. I just want to point out, life is real, life happens. It happens around us, and we have people like Katherine Henry up against the biggest fight of our lives. And so I really appreciate when you are able to join us, because I know how hard you work. I see the results. I hear the results. I play the results. Fabulous. Yeah.
Well, and that's actually something, I guess I feel like we need to talk a little bit more about just in general. And that's some of the recent work that I've been doing. Down here in Florida, they have what are called legislative delegation meetings, where it's the whole county, and all the state reps and senators are essentially part of this county delegation. And then you also have, your city and other officials, county officials, that will come to this meeting as well. And everybody, they all get to give their little short presentation. But then members of the public are, invited to speak, and depending on the county, given 2 or 3 minutes or whatever. And I decided to speak up at my county delegation meeting 2.5 weeks ago now. And even though there's specific things about medical freedom, constitutional carry, right to life, government accountability, that I gave them proposed language on in some materials I submitted ahead of time, I actually spent my 3 minutes talking about the oath of office and reminding them what it is and what it is not. And then subsequently there was a package of bills being introduced down here. The House Bill, I think it's 305, and Senate Bill 222 in Florida, that they're identical, one in each chamber, that are being touted as like, the Medical Protection Act and all this stuff. And it does some good things. But when I started looking through this 25-page bill, expecting to see quite a bit of freedom better secured, because especially of how long this bill is, I was really disgusted to see some of the things that were left in there. And what disturbed me the most was that when I went to explain some of these to some of these freedom-fighting groups on social media, like there's a Telegram channel for Florida Freedom Keepers, say that 3 times fast. The response to me was, well, and keep in mind, I wasn't asking questions about why they would do that or why they would write it that way. I don't care. I was actually at first just telling people, like, hey, there's some concerns. They left a lot of bad stuff in here. We need to work with them to improve this language. And one of the admins of that group replied back, well, here, you just need to reach out directly to them, and all your questions will be answered, and they've been working on this for years, and all the language is exactly the way it needs to be for a reason. And so I posed the question back, okay, but are you okay with giving up some of your liberties just to better secure others? Are you okay with that kind of compromise happening? And I never got a straight answer from that person other than more, you just need to talk to them. I learned so much from talking to them, and they've been doing this for years, and they're experts, and, basically I don't know what I'm talking about. And what's concerning to me is that that's the way it's been in the grassroots and the freedom movement really for quite some time. And I think it's because of a lack of education and a lack of courage. It's one or both of those things. And even in 2020, when we saw our then Republican-led legislature in Michigan introducing bills in fall of 2020 that were, about microchipping, that were okay with microchipping individuals, that were okay with the governor having the power to issue executive orders to shut down the state and require masks and require vaccines and all that stuff, but just shorten the number of days. And it was like shortening it to, say, it was either 7 or 14, I can't remember now. But then the legislature could, of course, keep extending that if they felt it was necessary. And I was just flabbergasted and disgusted because, hello, the legislature doesn't have the authority to shut down the state. They don't have the authority to tell people they can't open their businesses, they can't go to church, they have to literally stay in their homes, they have to wear masks, they have to do a vaccine, and neither does the governor. And so when you had so many, some of these bills, it was unanimous of those present and voting that they were supporting these things, and it's just dumbfounding. Hello, all of you, red or blue, swore to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, and you are completely throwing that out the window. And why? Because it's a better compromise? Because, the governor won't sign it, so at least it's less days, and maybe she'll still sign it, and blah, blah, blah. So I want to challenge everyone who is listening now to, I don't care what party you belong to, you really need to think about what the Constitution says. And you need to think about, and now keep in mind, for those of you who don't know much of my background, I'll tell you that before I was an attorney, I was a mediator. And I've done thousands of mediations. I have successfully completed thousands of mediations, everywhere from divorce to adult guardianship, child protection, custody, agriculture, rural development. I'm sure there's many more I can't even think of. General civil and contracts and landlord-tenant, you name it. Thousands of cases. I something like a 98% rate of getting some sort of compromise and agreement from the people involved in the dispute. But compromise can be very useful in one-on-one situations, and in fact, a democracy or a republic, which is what we have, either one of those, a government of the people, compromise is a cornerstone. But there are certain things, that you can never compromise on, because the Constitution says, no, you can't compromise on God-given liberties. You can't compromise on your right to freedom of religion, freedom of the press, free speech, right to instruct your representatives. There's no compromising on our right to bear arms. There's no compromising on our right against unreasonable government searches and seizures, or due process, or speedy trials, or public hearings in court. Things that all three branches of the government, especially those in Michigan, really screwed up on in 2020 and 2021, and, continuing. But with all the executive orders and the administrative orders from the Supreme Court and everything else, it was, we have an emergency, so those rights are going to be put on pause. That's what they said. And way too many Republicans or supposed conservatives stepped up to say, yeah, that's terrible, that's wrong, just to get votes. But then when push comes to shove, they're like, I'm okay with certain, some of these executive orders, or I'm okay with, certain limitations, as long as we get the main one secured. No, those are the areas we can't compromise on. So, at any rate, I'm trying to be careful and listen for when you have to go to commercial break. I'm waiting purposely.
No rush. I regret that we don't have more time, so we're good. Okay. And I do appreciate, just backtracking a little bit, I played the meeting that you were speaking of. I had played that in the news because I think this is so important. And what I want people to realize, what happens in one state is very important, because other states may or may not follow. And so what you're doing every time you speak out, Katherine, you're helping everybody, even beyond what you think.
Well, and that's why I've been sharing these things. And I actually shared that video, at least the whole video is 6 minutes, but my direct speech portion of it was 3 minutes. And I shared that in the episode this week because I wanted, the more I thought about it, I was like, people need to hear this. And it's because it's not just, like you said, the governor, the governing bodies down here in Florida. It's people in Michigan. The oath of office applies to by the U.S. Constitution, it applies to every single state legislator in every state. But look at the Michigan Constitution, Article 11, Section 1. Every single government officer, and if you look at state law, MCL 15.151, literally, even if you volunteer for the government somewhere, you volunteer to clean up the gym after, special events at your local public school, you are required by law to take the oath of office to uphold the U.S. and Michigan Constitution. So we're not. It's never been okay, and so it's certainly no longer okay for somebody to say, well, that's a different branch of government, or that's state government, and I work for local government, or that's not my department. If you have an issue somewhere here in the city, you got to go talk to that guy down the hall, or that's not okay. What we're tasked with doing when we take that oath of office is that's the number one job of anyone who volunteers for or works in government in any capacity. That is to uphold the U.S. and state constitutions. That's the number one job. Everything else comes after that. So if you don't understand the Constitution, if you refuse to continually read the Constitution, I don't care what if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, if you're a school teacher, if you're city municipal, utilities worker or whatever, it doesn't matter. You have to support and defend the U.S. and Michigan Constitution, or whatever state you happen to be in. So when I share my meetings down here or whatever, I'm doing that because, in Michigan they don't have legislative delegation meetings, but here's something that they do have: coffee hours. Mm-hmm. The legislators go around in, at various points throughout their district, and, it's usually, say, one day a week that they focus on doing that. But you'll see it plastered on their social media platforms and usually also on their specific website through the Michigan legislature's main website. If not, call their office, find out when and where. But it's typically a set, number of places and times that they go and listen to people. Make sure you do that. And if you work at a job that you just can't take time off during those coffee hours, then send them an email. Send them a written letter. Give them a phone call. And then follow up. Find at least 3 other friends that care about freedom, just like you, and have them do the same thing. Have it be a joint effort. I'll take a step back and say that, all this can be overwhelming, right? To chase down each of our government representatives and remind them of their oath and, make sure they're on the straight and narrow and doing what they're supposed to and not doing what they're not supposed to. It's so overwhelming, and it could lead to burnout. But this year, actually, it was the last Get Involved challenge I did of last year, of 2022. But it was pick 3 for 2023. So pick 3 freedom-fighting topics that are super important to you for this year, and only focus on those, because that's going to take up all your time anyway. It might be Second Amendment. It might be medical freedom. It might be right to life, especially given the Dobbs decision and whatnot last year. It might be, any number of things, but pick only 3 for 2023, and then find others in your community who, share some of those same values, and then you guys can together make an impact. If you and 3 friends called or visited in person or emailed your state reps on those 3 issues every single month, I don't care what state you're in, your state rep is going to get that message. Whether you think they're listening or not, well, that's on them. But you have the duty to make those communications, to make that effort, to let them know at the very least you're watching what they do. So we can't sit back and let other people continue to do this fight. You're super busy. I get it. We're all busy.
Right.
I've raised 4 kids. I'm still raising kind of 2 of them. One of them came back home, and one just recently turned 9.
Yeah.
I get it, and we're not made of money. If anybody is wondering and just kind of assuming, well, all attorneys are rich and that's why they could work for free, I've always done one kind of pro bono work or another my entire career. I started off as a public defender. I've been a public defender in 2 different states. I've represented kids in abuse and neglect cases. You name it. But I'm doing what I'm doing because it's our job. And attorneys can't do it alone. In fact, most attorneys couldn't even tell you where in the Constitution some of these essential rights are. And maybe in the U.S. Constitution they could name several, maybe. But they don't know where they are in the state Constitution, and that's 98% of attorneys. But the Constitution isn't just for attorneys, and that's why it's so important that we all read it. This week's Get Involved Challenge for my Restore Freedom side of things was to read your Declaration of Rights, or Bill of Rights. Okay, so in the state Constitution, in Michigan and Florida, they both start with the Declaration of Rights. It's Article 1 of the state Constitution. In Michigan, there's 27, unless, did they add a new one? Yeah, I think that might have been 28. Anyway, 27, 28, something like that. And Florida is also the first article of the state Constitution. But read it. Read it yourself. Don't look for the Cliff Notes version. Don't just skim it. Read it. Because it is important. And the Michigan Constitution has some phenomenal things in there that are way better protections than what the U.S. Constitution has in terms of laying it out for the government officials. But when we don't follow it, when we don't know it, when we're not holding them to that standard, then none of it really matters.
And
so, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and I think I just wanted to second what you said about everybody get involved. Everybody get involved in some way. So I just wanted to throw that in. It is so important. It can't be a handful of people, and then one day things get so bad and everybody's going, how did that happen? Well, here's how it happened. You didn't do your part. You didn't do something. No matter how big or small you think it is. Yeah, so, okay. I'm going to take a break, give your voice a rest, let you grab some coffee. We'll take 3 minutes and then we'll come back. If you have just tuned in, you're listening to Freedom Friday. Our guest today is Katherine Henry. Katherine Henry, native of Michigan, constitutional attorney, and we only have until 9 o'clock. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll rejoin our guest, Katherine Henry. You're listening to Freedom Friday, where you have the freedom to speak freely.
I'm constitutional attorney Katherine Henry, and this is the preview of episode 2 of season 2 of Restore Freedom Weekly. This week, we're going to go in depth about fighting back against local tyrannical governments. And of course, we're going to use some real life examples.
I said, hey, what's going on?
This governor tries to control us, trampling all over our God-given individual liberties.
Join Kris and Marianne for Freedom Fridays, every Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. The only program of its kind in the UP, Freedom Fridays, where you have the freedom to speak freely. Freedom Fridays, only on WMPL, 920 a.m., 107.3 FM.
Time now is 8:33. Our guest this morning is Katherine Henry. Thank you. I hope you had a chance to grab a quick sip of coffee or water with lemon. I don't know, what do you like to drink in the early hours of the day? I'd be lost without coffee, frankly. So, which
My husband too.
Yeah, I know. Which reminds me, earlier this week I read a story about now they want to say that coffee is contributing to what they call climate change. Oh, I went to town on that one, Katherine. Are you kidding? Is it racist too? I mean, I've got questions. So, and I do Restore Freedom, KH.com. Check it out. That is Restore Freedom, KH.com. You can read and listen with Katherine Henry, to Katherine Henry. I love the Get Involved Challenge. I like how you broke it down to 3 because you had mentioned a few minutes ago, oh gosh, there's so much going on. Where do you focus? Sometimes it helps to have somebody say, focus, narrow it down. That, it's one of those small things that's actually a really big thing. So thank you for that. and
it's not a forever thing either. I mean, that's the thing, I really want to work on homeschooling freedom, and I really want to work on, just so many other topics. But for me, I am feeling the burnout. I mean, I've been working on freedom of fighting situations for years, but certainly since the start of COVID, I haven't taken a single vacation. I haven't taken a break. So it can feel very overwhelming. So I had to tell myself, okay, I'm going to have 3 main priorities for 2023, and really that can be quite a bit too, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to have something that's reasonable. If you want to get out there and change the world and fight for all of the freedom all the time, every day, you're going to spread yourself too thin. It's actually, if you guys were listening to the commercials this morning, I forget what the name of the law firm was, but there was a law firm that said, we only do family law. We're focusing so we can be better at that one topic. And when I had my practice, I started as a general practitioner doing pretty much everything, but then narrowed it down to 3 main areas, because it does allow you to be more effective in the work that you're doing and to really, be successful in those areas. And the same holds true in the freedom fight. So, it's not just something, catchy to say, #3 for 2023, but it's something that it makes everything so much more feasible. And it's going to take everyone literally doing something on a regular basis. There's been times where, people get all concerned about things that are happening at their local school boards, in their schools, or, maybe you're super upset about some proposed legislation, which if you're in Michigan or in any state, yes, there is legislation that's being proposed that you should be very concerned about. But, maybe there's things at the federal level that has all your attention. You follow what's going on with the ATF or, just federal government restrictions of some kind. Just make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself. So, and be consistent. If you really care about fixing and addressing issues at your local level, and specifically say, things are happening in the schools, then go to all your school board meetings. Get to know the teachers and the principals and the building administrators in your district. I know, the UP is a small town atmosphere across the whole UP, but, let them know you're specifically watching and listening, for those specific things. And, at any rate, I guess I should ask if you had anything to jump in there before I went for.
Well, thank you. But when you and I have a chance to do this program, I'm raptly attentive. Like, oh, what else? So, but I think, it's very important what you said. Everybody, if everybody did something collectively, we've got more trees, I think, up here than anywhere that I know of, but we have a lot of people too. So everybody just stand up, get involved, and stay involved. And you can do that by narrowing it down. The overwhelming part, that can happen. And we don't want everybody who's doing their fight for whatever area they have chosen to just drop off the map. We need everybody. Yes. And this morning I played, your Get Involved challenge discussing fighting back against local tyranny. I think that is so important. And I'll admit, I didn't realize how important it was until the last 3 years. So I'm a little ashamed of that, but now I realize how massively important it is. And it's encouraging to know that people are standing up. I received a clip this morning that I included in the news about Lapeer County in Lower Michigan and how they fought back. Everybody, there were four gentlemen that spoke. Now, I don't know how many, but all of these people went out for local offices in their town and ousted the tyrants. And it was, it's encouraging, and I think that's really important too, to hear the good news. Things are happening. But it didn't just happen because it fell out of the sky. Oh, look here. No, people hit the ground running. And that's what Katherine Henry has been doing. So be sure.
And if you're looking for something local, another good example is Ottawa County. Mm-hmm. My good friends, mainly Joe Moss, he's now the new chair of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners. But until this last election, he had never, been in office. It's not like he's always had political aspirations, but he's a good friend of mine. And late in 2022, he came to me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea that we really need to turn things around and get some local people vetted and running to replace these." These tyrants, whether they're Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. If they're voting against the Constitution, if they're acting outside of the scope of their constitutional authority, they've got to go. And they did that. They actually turned the entire Ottawa County Board of Commissioners, and turns out that two of the people that ran with them are actually just more establishment people that don't exactly celebrate freedom, but they still are hanging on, even despite those two, they still are hanging on to the majority there, and they're actually making huge change. And that's what it's about. I mean, it took them 2 full years of planning and campaigning and, getting the right candidates and vetting them and going to meetings and talking to those who are currently in government. And, the things that they did in their first meeting alone, their first meeting was over 5 hours long. And when I texted my friend Joe, who, like I said, is now the chair of that Ottawa County Board of Commissioners, I said, "Hey, did I just see that your meeting today lasted over 5 hours?" And he said, "Yes, I learned from the best," because I myself was serving on the Georgetown Township Board, 7th largest township in all of Michigan. I was on the Board of Trustees, and our very first meeting that after I was elected and put on the board, our very first meeting, we didn't get beyond roll call because I objected at roll call based on the fact that 3 of our board members were still trying to participate by Zoom and not physically present for the meeting, which is what is required by the Constitution.
Yes.
So we literally had a 45-minute meeting just about roll call and how people could actually be present.
That's
Sometimes
great.
You just got to do what you got to do. I mean, I didn't want to sit there for 45 minutes getting nothing actually accomplished, but I was not willing to play their game. People need to be able to instruct their representatives. Mm-hmm. So, and our meetings would often go 3 or 4 hours long when I was on the board because, and they never did before, and they may never go that long again.
Right.
But that's because I actually read all the meeting packets. I read every page, all the stuff coming out of each of the committees, the Planning Commission or Downtown Development Authority or whatever, stuff that was being put in front of the main board. It's their job to actually fully investigate and know about things before they vote on them instead of just taking, this board, voted, to recommend to us to take this certain action. Okay, great. But then each board member still has to look into that for themselves. And if you're not on the board, you could still get access to those materials. You should be reading all of those meeting minutes or whatever. If you're going to focus on, local government issues, it's a lot easier to do than you think, but you have to do it. So, I don't know. My goal is that everyone truly knows the Constitution, and they are doing something active to hold government officials in any branch, on any topic, but just hold them accountable to that oath of office. If we don't start doing it as individuals in our own communities, it's just going to keep getting worse. And that's where we get to this point of, you have these state reps that were trying just to shorten the number of days that the governor could issue these executive orders in Michigan, or, you have, a lot of other bad bills that they've done in the last couple of years, even with the Republican-controlled legislature, or you have these supposed freedom-fighting bills down here being introduced in Florida by the conservatives. Let's not just blindly follow an organization just because they generally fight for the same things we do. No, before you share something, look at it yourself. Read it yourself. Does anybody want to sit down and read a 25-page bill that's being introduced? No, I don't particularly want to do that. But it's something, if I want to say, and how the government is affecting me, I have to know what I'm talking about. I have to read it. I have to look through it. So that's why it's so important to be realistic with your time and narrow it down to just 3 topics for 2023. And if you want to switch and do a different set of topics next year, great. But narrow down so you can be most effective. So I don't know. I was hoping that perhaps if anybody has some, specific questions about really how to get involved at different levels of government or with different topics, that they might call in and we can explore that more. But
well, yeah, you've got 15 minutes, friends. Actually, let's say 12. So I don't have to rush you off the air. Yeah, this is your opportunity. Catherine's busy. Everybody's busy. We don't have a chance to speak with Katherine as often as I'd like. So 482-1330, 482-1331, the numbers to call. It is 8:45. Then I lost my train of thought. I thank you for the story about Ottawa County. That's very encouraging. And I love the story where the roll call was challenged because it was not being done correctly. That is fantastic. I think that's great, because it shows those who are sitting there, hey, people here know what's going on and you're not following this correctly. So I like that. I did have a question, a statement. Locally in the Copper Country, a lot of people ran for local offices that hadn't run before. That was very exciting to see. And some, made it to the office they were seeking and some did not. And I told those who didn't, I'm like, do it again. You just keep trying, keep going.
Exactly.
So that is fantastic. So in this community here, it seems that we have seen people coming together and getting out there and working hard, and yet there's still so much to do. But now that's my statement. Now the question: do you think, or have you found that maybe there are some people who want to speak up, but they look at those who are sitting, I'll call it the power seat, those who are, they're holding the office. Do you find that people are maybe intimidated? Maybe they're naturally introverts and they think, I can't do that. Go up to that person, they're wearing a suit. What am I supposed to say? And if you do think there are people, what's your advice for them?
Yeah, it's, introverted or extroverted, it's our duty one and the same. And so, generally I'm more of an extroverted person. At least I've been told I come across that way. But really, I'm not comfortable when I go to these meetings. In fact, this last legislative delegation, I'd never met any of those state reps or senators. I'd never met any of the room was full. There were hundreds of people in this room. All the local government officials from every single municipality in the county, county officials, nonprofit organizations, you name it. That people were there and speaking. And so I was nervous. I was super anxious to get up there in front of these people and basically say, hey guys, you can't do what you're probably getting ready to do this year. And that's to compromise on our God-given liberties. No, what you have to do is follow the Constitution, even if it's not convenient, even if it's not politically, the in thing, even if it's going to make you lose your next election or whatever. You have to follow the Constitution. And so, I was not comfortable doing that, but it's something that we have to do. I still don't like doing the videos. I never liked all the, speaking in front of people, and I've done hundreds. Just in 2020 alone, I did probably 250, 300 speeches and events all across the state of Michigan. It's not my thing. I hate being in the car, and driving to the UP is definitely not a 5-minute task from the Grand Rapids area.
Right.
But we went over to Detroit. We went over to Flint. We went on, Ludington and Kalamazoo and the Thumb and Traverse City and past Hancock. I mean, shoot, if I had to cross 2 bridges just to get to speak to people, that's a long trip.
That is.
So, but it's not something I want to do. So if you're listening today and you're like, gosh, I don't know, I don't feel like that's my cup of tea, that's not my strong suit or whatever, think of it this way. If you want to leave it to the freedom fighters, let's say, attorneys, you want to leave it to attorneys to push legislation through or to, fight battles in court, get these court cases. Most attorneys don't readily, study the Constitution. Do you really want to leave your freedom up to people who, went through 3 years of law school after 4 years of college, but never fully studied the state constitution or the U.S. Constitution? I mean, it doesn't even make sense, right? How are they going to protect your rights if they haven't even been studying them? And what about your kids and your grandkids? If you're going to leave other people in your community to be the ones to fight the political battles, to, fight for justice, or whatever the case may be, if you're going to leave it to somebody else, then what future are you really leaving for your kids? What are you teaching your kids to do? Because quite frankly, all of us who are parents of teenagers or early 20s or whatever, we've seen and been disgusted by and commented on all the ways that, I'll just say millennials, right? The new kids, the new young adults, that they kind of take the shortcut route, and in general, as a generation, they just don't work near as hard as prior generations. And, there's so much where, we all comment on that, because we all see it. But yet, okay, so what are you willing to do as the person who's commenting or, sharing concerns about that? What are you willing to do to combat that yourself? Well, you got to show your kids, you got to show your grandkids, you got to show your nieces and nephews, you got to show everyone in your community what it looks like to be truly responsible as a citizen, and be engaged. Even if you only pick one topic, even if you only pick, getting obscenities out of school books in school libraries, or out of the books at school libraries, or getting the bad books out of school libraries. And so you're focusing on that. You're focusing your time on just your local school board members or building administrators. Okay, that's something. So do that. But just to leave it to other people, and what other people would it be? Would it be grassroots organizations? Think about the example I gave just a moment ago with the Florida Freedom Keepers. Overall, very good organization from what I can tell. Overall, hardworking, wonderful Americans who just are fed up. Overall, by and large. Yeah.
Hold that thought, please. Let's take this call. Hi, good morning. You are on Freedom Friday with Katherine Henry. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, and thanks to Katherine for everything you do, and Kris for you touting freedom continuously. I just was thinking of, teaching our young people Constitution, maybe an idea too. I don't know how much it's taught in our public school system. Is it, do they promote it? I'm not real familiar with that, but that's another idea to get to our board meetings. Is this being taught in depth, That was just a thought I had here.
Yeah, that's a great thought.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to call.
I didn't have any specific question, but, just was thinking as I'm listening. But
yeah, statements are great. We love that, too.
Okay.
All right, thanks for calling.
Yep.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. So sorry to interrupt you there, and thank you for that call to our caller. Appreciate that. Right, the schools, and one thing before I forget, and before you get back to your point, but you had mentioned the young people of all ages, do your part. And I've always felt fortunate. I mean, we are, as you so humorously pointed out, 2 bridges to get here. Yeah, pretty much. Because we are so far removed. I mistakenly thought for years, well, the UP is always like, 20 years behind everybody else. And that's not the case with all the social media and everything else. So the young people that I have been fortunate enough to meet who do have values and good work ethics, I've asked them, is it hard for you? Because the majority that I have seen, they're like, I'm not going to do that. Or they don't know about anything. They don't know because they were never exposed to what we're talking about right now. So I'm encouraged by the young people that I have met up here who are doing their part. because it's not an easy task for anybody. But back to your point when I interrupted you.
Well, yeah, so as far as that freedom fighting organization that I wanted to give you the example of, they're not even the ones that put the language together for these bills that are so concerning to me about medical freedom. And I forget the name of the other one, but you essentially have several, like all of the main medical freedom organization, grassroots groups down here in Florida are supporting these bills. And I think they're doing it with the best of intentions. I don't think anybody in that movement or supporting these bills has, any ill intent or anything like that. But they just don't get it. They are so used to thinking, well, we can only fight for this amount of freedom, but we're okay with leaving all the other tyrannical pieces in the law because, well, it's just not going to pass this year, or it wouldn't get that much support, or, the governor wouldn't sign it, or whatever the case is. Whatever the excuse is, think of it this way. If we started from a place that was, when the Constitution was put into place, that's right in the middle, right? It applies to everybody. It's not favoring any kind of ideology. It's just securing our rights. And then time goes on, and we certainly haven't seen lesser government. We've seen bigger government telling us more and more what to do and trying to regulate every single aspect of our lives. And then also simultaneously pushing bad morals and problematic things like critical race theory and all these other things into the school system and into our communities and into, inundating with social media. But we need to make sure that we're accounting for that, because the line has been pushed and pushed and pushed, and those that are supposedly conservatives and fighting for freedom and enjoy their freedom, they've been, okay, you guys are pushing me, fine, we'll give up a little bit of this, or we'll give you a little bit more of what you want for that, or, you're fighting and screaming for abortion rights, and so let's just agree on maybe, how about a ban at the first trimester or at 15 weeks? What if we put in a ban in the law that you can't have an abortion after 15 weeks? Mm-hmm. If an unborn child is still a child and has life, and picking an arbitrary number like 15 weeks, it doesn't change the fact that the child was alive 3 days before that.
Right.
Or 2 weeks before that.
Hold that thought, Catherine. Hi, good morning. You're on Freedom Friday. Go ahead. You're on with Katherine Henry. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I was just wondering about how we could hold our department accountable, because they certainly didn't hold up anything with the Constitution during the height of everything.
Did I?
Is there anything?
Yeah, did I hear you correctly? I want to be sure I heard you correctly and that Catherine heard you correctly. How can we hold the health department accountable? Was that the statement?
Yeah, like this local health department. They were just out of control with all of their demands.
I'll tell you.
With the fining of the restaurants and all that stuff, the fines didn't change anything. Like not letting them be open, and I don't know. Remember all that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. And
yeah, so is there anything, if something in the future comes up, what can we do about that? Because the governor gave them so much supposed power,
Exactly. Catherine, would you like to speak to that? We have 2 minutes left. Thank you for your call. Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. All right, Catherine, 2 minutes left.
Yes, so on that particular thought, if you go to my website, which is restorefreedomkh.com, restorefreedomk as in Catherine, H as in Henry.com, you can search for health department or, those kinds of things, because that's something I was telling people back in April of 2020, that the governor was going to start using the public health code, and she never even tapped into some of the really egregious things that are in the public health code. But the best thing that you could do when they start trying to go down that road and issue mandates or close businesses or fine people for doing things that are just exercising their own rights, is to stand up and say no. Like, look at Merlena's Bistro in the West Michigan area. She stayed open when the health department told her no, she couldn't. So many other people, the Iron Pig restaurant in, I think that's Otsego, they stayed open. And they were fighting, and it puts them in a defensive position. But really, you just have to you have to not comply with that. You have to educate your friends and your neighbors and government officials about what their oath of office is. Give them a copy of MCL 15.151 that says they have to take an oath to uphold the U.S. and state constitutions just to be in that job. And then ask them where in the Constitution does it allow them to do what they're doing. Because we don't have to prove that we have rights in order to exercise them. The catch-all is Article 1, Section 23, or the Ninth Amendment, Article 1, Section 23 of Michigan Constitution, or Ninth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, that says we have our unenumerated rights. But the government needs to prove that they have a power to begin with. Otherwise, they don't have it. So I know we ran out of time, but please make sure to check out that website because I have lots more information and speeches and documents on there to use.
Katherine, I look forward to having you again. You are always so helpful. I do appreciate it. I'm sorry to the caller who is trying now. Program's over. I'm so sorry, but we've got to go. And just for the caller who was able to get through, there is a meeting at the Western Upper Peninsula Health Department Monday, January 30th, 6 o'clock. Mark that on your calendar. Okay. Katherine, you have a fantastic day. Get a little fun in somewhere in between all the hard work and
I'll try.
Okay. All right. And we say hi to Kris Kyro, that's Katherine's grandma. And if you know her, wish her well and tell her Katherine did a great job, as usual. Just in case you didn't hear, but I bet she was listening. Hi, Kris. All right, Katherine, thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Go to restorefreedomkh.com. You're listening to Freedom Friday, where you have the freedom to speak freely. Next week, our guest for Freedom Friday will be Pat Colbeck. And now we go to Superior 9.